"Shut up, old broad. Maid should stay quiet." Snarled at by my sister-in-law, I froze in terror. I'd never seen a woman spit out such foul language, grabbing me by my collar like a man since I became an adult. She was a problem for both her parents and my husband. I'd hoped she'd settled down once married. My name's Helen, a 35-year-old housewife. Ever since we got married 5 years ago, we've been living with my in-laws. They're good people, and considering I was also working at the time, they'd help me with the housework. My husband Chris, same age as me, and my father-in-law also helped out. We were all there for each other. We'd chosen to live together because it's how our parents had lived, and they suggested we could do the same. I know a lot of women wouldn't be fond of living with their in-laws, but I had grown up in a family of 12, and the thought of living alone made me feel lonely. So I was actually happy when the suggestion was made. My in-laws were very likable, and I wished we could continue living happily, but a sad event occurred. My mother-in-law was injured outdoors and had to be hospitalized. She had had a heart attack on her way down some stairs and fell while in pain. The heart disease made her very frail. After that, I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. While visiting my mother-in-law in the hospital and doing the housework, I was grateful that my father-in-law and Chris were there to support me. In the midst of all this, my sister-in-law, Sarah, came back. Sarah had always been the black sheep of the family. She's 33 now, working part-time in a clothing store and supposedly doing some night work as well. Before we got married, my father-in-law had said to her, "If life is too tough, you can live with us." But she had flatly refused. "I can't do whatever I want if I live at home." So, she'd said, and troubled my in-laws, because she'd always been irresponsible. In school, she'd fought with her teachers and caused trouble for my mother-in-law. She had conflicts with classmates and even had an affair with a married man during her college years, caused a big problem involving his wife. According to my mother-in-law, Sarah had been a very honest and kind person. However, because her hair was naturally blonde, and also she has an attractive appearance, she'd faced hardship in school due to stereotypical prejudice against blonde women. That's how it started, and she had become jaded. Especially in middle school, the situation was severe. Her teachers looked down on her even though she had done nothing wrong. Feeling that she'd be criticized regardless, Sarah's behavior and grades were gradually getting worse. I understand the situation as I had also attended a strict school. One of my friends had natural blonde hair and faced difficulty. My friend was very sensitive and would look down when scolded by teachers, so I often stood up for her. I always protested against teachers who judge people by their appearance. After that, stubborn teachers in my school gradually began to change their attitudes. She must have grown up with her heart wounded, so I hoped she could relax while living in our in-laws' house. I knew she was worried about her hospitalized mother, so I decided to take her to the hospital with me. I was mistaken to have thought so. As Sarah walked into our family home, she looked at me and without even saying hello said, "Oh, are you the housekeeper? I'd love some tea." Immediately, my father-in-law raised his voice in anger. "Sarah, apologize to Helen. She's Chris's wife. She's not the housekeeper." "Eh? She seems so plain. And she's not even pretty. I thought she was a housekeeper on the job. Chris, you have terrible taste in women." Anger began to stir within me, but I decided to respond maturely, and I flashed Sarah a smile. "Hello, Sarah. I'm Helen, Chris's wife. Remember, we met at our wedding?" Now that you mention it, wedding dresses are amazing, aren't they? They can make even someone like you look somewhat pretty." Again, my father-in-law's voice echoed throughout the room. "Sarah, that's enough." Surprised by his voice, Chris came down from the second floor. He too seemed to have had his share of problems with Sarah in the past. Before Chris and I got married, he lent her some money. Not only did she never pay him back, but she also told him, "Listen to what your sister says, because you're my brother." They've been at odds ever since, always glaring at each other. Even after that, Sarah continued her terrible behavior. Without inquiring about her mother's condition, she just kept barking orders at me. "Hey, housekeeper, make some tea quickly. Also, bring out some snacks. When I come home, you should be ready immediately, shouldn't you?" The one who glared at her with stern eyes was Chris. "Helen isn't a housekeeper. If you keep talking like that, you'll have to leave. Weren't you supposed to be worried about Mom?" "Mom? She's in the hospital, right? Shouldn't the doctors be taking care of her?" "But if you don't see her, how would you know what's going on?" How much she's suffering from her illness? What kind of injury she sustained? Besides, Mom has always been worried about you, Sarah. Wouldn't it be nice if you showed her your lively face? With a sigh, Sarah responded, I'm not interested in the woman who gave birth to me as a blonde woman. My father-in-law got up and shouted, Your mother isn't to blame. Do you know how many times your mother cleaned up your mess? How much love she has poured into you? Have you ever thought about how I feel? No one understands the feelings of being whispered about, being seen differently when you're a child. Oh, I shouldn't have come. I just came to talk about getting engaged, and it's seriously annoying. Sarah looked as if time had stopped in her rebellious phase. As she headed towards the front door to leave, I chased after her. Congratulations on your engagement, Sarah. Ignoring my words, she tried to leave, but I continued. Are you really not going to visit your mother? That's when Sarah stopped in her tracks. You're so annoying. I just came to talk about my engagement to a rich man. I see. I apologize. Oh, you've found an amazing man. But remember, jobs don't determine a person's worth. Of course, I admire people who save lives and support livelihoods. I respect those who provide places for people to enjoy. Even housewives, who might not make money but work tirelessly for their families, are valuable. Every job in this world serves a purpose for people. So don't judge people by their jobs. Your father and Chris are your family. Don't look down on them. As soon as I said this, Sarah's face changed. With a look of deep hatred, she glared at me. The next thing I knew, she grabbed my collar. I was engulfed in a chill, like a jolt of electricity. Shut up, you old hag. Housekeepers should keep their mouths shut. Fear overwhelmed me. My heart felt as if it had shrunk, causing a painful sensation in my chest. I tried to yell, but no voice came out. I was so scared that I shut my eyes. Then I felt Sarah's hand slip away from my chest, and a sigh of relief escaped me. I'm bringing my fiancé over next week. Act like a proper housekeeper and stay in the corner. Sarah spouted off before slamming the door shut with a loud bang. I hoped her aggressive demeanor would mellow out once she got married. That's what I thought to myself. 3 days later, something happened. As I was walking around the neighborhood to go shopping, I saw a little girl in the park. She looked about the age to start elementary school, her face covered by her hands, crying loudly. What's wrong, sweetheart? I lost my mom, she replied. I too was quite mischievous when I was younger, often running around and getting separated from my parents. My siblings would always find me during those times. Where did you get lost? I don't know. After asking her name, I held her hand and began loudly calling for her mother as we walked around. Luckily, we found her mother quickly. The woman thanked me with tears in her eyes. On closer inspection, I recognized her as an old classmate. Emma, is that you? Wait, are you Helen Wilson? Wilson is my maiden name. Hearing it after such a long time brought back memories. I can't believe the mother of the lost child is you, Emma. I'm truly sorry for the trouble. My daughter was chasing a bird, and I lost sight of her. Thank you so much. After sharing a laugh, we decided that running into each other was fate and exchanged contact information, promising to grab a coffee sometime. We had been in the same class, but not in the same group, so we didn't interact much. But now that we're adults, I feel like we might have gotten along well, even back then. The next day, I went to a cafe with Emma. She too is a housewife, and her daughter is currently in kindergarten. As we chatted about our childhood and recent events, time just flew by. As the conversation turned to the topic of marriage, Emma looked somewhat distressed. My older brother is finally getting married, but I'm a bit worried. The girl he's marrying was known as a delinquent around our neighborhood. Maybe she's become a better person if your brother wants to marry her? I hope so. By the way, did you know that my brother had a crush on you, Helen? I was shocked. What? Well, we weren't in the same grade, right? You were pretty popular, Helen. Everyone had a crush on you. Did you know that even the guy I had a crush on was into you? She told me his name. His face came to mind, but I had no idea he had a crush on me. I was actually a bit jealous of you. But that's all in the past. I feel relieved now that I've told you, she laughed. Oh wow, this is a bit complicated. Who would have thought that the popular Helen would end up marrying the mature Chris? When Emma said that, she squinted her eyes as if reminiscing about the past. Chris and I were in the same class back in grade school. Like Emma, we had no interaction at the time. He was less than an acquaintance to me. However, at a reunion 10 years ago, Chris confessed to me. I've actually liked you since we were kids. When I heard that, I knew I wanted no one else but Chris. Even now, I'm glad we got married. Then it was time for Emma to pick up her daughter, and our tea time came to an end. After that, I visited my mother-in-law in the hospital and talked about Sarah. As expected, my mother-in-law was worried about Sarah and said, "I need to be discharged right away," and tried to move around unnecessarily. That day, since Chris is on a business trip, my father-in-law and I will handle everything. In place of my mother-in-law, we'll make sure to scrutinize her partner thoroughly. When I said that, my mother-in-law chuckled. Seeing her like that, I began to prepare for the marriage introduction with determination. Then on Saturday, Sarah brought her fiancé. Remembering the incident from last week when Sarah grabbed me by the collar and yelled at me, I shivered with fear. I had to pull myself together and manage to smile. Her fiancé was a hefty man and looked quite strong. For some reason, when he saw my face, he seemed surprised. My father-in-law and I invited them inside and asked them to take a seat. When I went to prepare some tea, I heard my father-in-law and Sarah's fiancés exchanging greetings from the living room. However, I missed hearing his name as I was busy boiling water. When I returned, I had to properly greet him. I thought about this as I made the tea and placed it on the table when I got back to the living room. That's when Sarah gave me a smug smile and said, "Mike, this woman is our housemaid. She works for us for free. Isn't that hilarious?" During our marriage introduction, saying such a thing, Sarah must be out of her mind. Even if she looks down on me, she should not express it in words. My father-in-law immediately scolded Sarah. "Sarah, that's enough. Mike, I apologize." "No, rather, Sarah, why do you call her a housemaid?" Mike, despite his appearance, spoke gently. However, he was furrowing his brows, staring at Sarah. "Well, that's what she is, right? Who would tie their hair back in a single knot nowadays? Wearing cheap clothes with jeans and an uncool apron? At least she seems to be wearing makeup, but I bet she uses cheap, non-branded makeup. She looked the same when she came last time. I can only think she's given up on looking like a woman." It looked like my father-in-law was barely holding himself back from yelling. As for Mike, he was taken aback, his face turned pale. "Don't you know? We went to the same grade school, right? When Sarah was in 7th grade, she should have been in the 9th grade. I thought everyone in the neighborhood knew that." And then my father-in-law answered, "My daughter seems to have little interest in anything other than herself. I'm sorry." Both Sarah and I were confused, not understanding what they were talking about. By chance, do you know who I am?" When I asked Mike, he smiled. "I apologize for the belated greeting. You used to be Helen Wilson before you got married, right? You might not know me, but my name is Mike. I heard my sister recently met you." "Oh, Emma, your sister was saying her brother is getting married. I never imagined it was with Sarah," I exclaimed in surprise, my voice ringing out a bit too loudly. "By the way, what does it mean that people in the neighborhood know about me? Is it because I come from a big family?" When I timidly asked that, Mike laughed and replied, "There are various reasons. Don't you know, Mrs. Wilson? You were pretty famous around here. Not just for being cute, but you also stood up to the hard-headed teachers and changed their attitude. You were student council president in middle and in high school, and the number of guys you've rejected is said to be over 300, among other tales, right?" Having heard that from Mike, I felt my body heat up in embarrassment. Surely my face must be turning bright red. "Oh, come on, what are you talking about? I knew people noticed me because I was one of 10 siblings, but I didn't do anything that great when I was a student, and I've only rejected about 5 guys who confessed their love to me. I heard from my sister that you stood up to the teachers to protect a kid with naturally blonde hair. The prejudice against them did not change immediately, but the teachers' attitudes gradually changed." Then Sarah loudly retorted, "Weren't Helen and I in different schools? I mean, I was constantly looked at with jaundiced eyes at school." My father-in-law sighed and started speaking. "Sarah, Helen was in the same school as you. Despite the softened attitude towards girls with blonde hair, you went ahead and dyed your hair even more fancy colors. Of course the teachers would get mad at that." "So if I hadn't dyed my hair, blonde hair would have been okay?" Sarah seemed shocked, but after looking down for a bit, she lifted her face, grinning in a rather creepy way. "But Helen, even though you were so active during your school days, now you're just a plain housewife. You can't even dress up fashionably. Poor thing. Taking care of your mother-in-law and doing housework must be tough. No matter what glories you had in the past, there's nothing to brag about now. That's what happens when you choose an office worker like my brother for a husband. You're really pathetic. Now, aren't I the real winner?" Sarah seemed to get more excited as she spoke, ending with a laugh. My father-in-law seemed about to retort, but I beat him to it. "That's just your opinion, isn't it? I'm very happy now. I live with a kind father-in-law and mother-in-law, and a loving husband. My mother-in-law is in the hospital now, so the house is a bit lonely, but she'll be able to be discharged in about 2 months. I'm thinking of taking good care of her, even for your share. I want her to live a long life." At my words, Sarah looked down. Besides, I'm not interested in fashion. Dressing up might make my husband happy, but it's not useful for anything else. As long as we have enough money to live, that's good enough. We were poor when I was at my parents' home. I think about the time when 12 of us lived in a small house. Compared to then, now is like heaven. Then Mike straightened up and talked to my father-in-law. Sir, I'm sorry. I originally came to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. However, after hearing Sarah's words, I've decided I don't want to marry her. Please forgive my rudeness. My father-in-law responded, From this exchange, it's clear that not many would want to marry Sarah. I won't say anything even if you call off the engagement. I'm really sorry. Mike apologized again, then stood up. Sarah, who had been rigid until now, lunged and grabbed onto Mike's leg. Hold on a minute, you're the one who proposed, aren't you? How can you talk about calling off the marriage so easily? I don't want to live with someone who treats my brother's wife like a maid and mocks her. In my home, there's my brother, his wife, and my sister. I can't stand it if my family gets hurt by you. I'll be nice to your family, that's a given. Then Mike sighed. So you switch your attitudes according to people. You look down on those you perceive as below you, and flatter those you see as above you, don't you? I regret not realizing you were such a person sooner, but now that I know, I can't love you anymore. Please let go of my hand if you understand. As Mike said that, Sarah released her grip, fell to her knees, and began to sob uncontrollably. My father-in-law and I left Sarah as she was and saw Mike out. After that, Sarah moved out of the house again. So far, whenever she had financial trouble, she would lean on my father-in-law and he would help her out. But now, given her disrespect towards my mother-in-law and treating me as a maid, he decided he wouldn't lend her money anymore, even if she begged. Apparently, Sarah is now working in a clothing store because she's too old to earn money from night jobs. However, she seems to be struggling as she can't afford to buy designer items with just her salary. No one would want to help someone who is only out for money. After being abandoned by Mike and receiving a cold shoulder from my father-in-law, Sarah went to my mother-in-law. It's appalling how she cried and begged the sick woman for money. My mother-in-law, far from worrying about her illness, was saddened when she saw Sarah crying and playing the victim. Then my mother-in-law decided to cut ties with Sarah, and since then, Sarah has not been seen. After that, my mother-in-law finally got discharged from the hospital. She needs a walking stick, and I support her body. I started to find ways to make house chores easier so that my mother-in-law could live comfortably. Then my in-laws and Chris started to express their gratitude to me. I am the one who should be grateful. You all have been a great help to me. Thank you, I said, and everyone gave warm smiles. Just that makes me feel happy. I have been keeping in touch with Emma and occasionally go out for coffee. And recently, I discovered that I'm pregnant. Everyone in the family was overjoyed, and my parents and siblings came to congratulate me one after another. I'm really happy that everyone is celebrating with me. The birth and child rearing from here on will be tough, but I want to live each day cherishing every moment. Growing up in a household where only my twin sister was doted on, I came to accept it as normal. How wonderful it must be, I thought, to have a close-knit family. The people who say, we must cherish our family, are likely those who have been cherished themselves. They probably experienced their family's love without question, considering it a given. My situation was different. My family was anything but close, and I don't remember ever being treated as important. To be precise, I was the only one who was treated like an outsider in my family. I'm Martha, a single woman in her 30s. As I mentioned, my family is not close. To be exact, everyone in my family, apart from me, gets along well. From the outside, we look like a happy family. But ever since I was little, I've never had a good time with them. I have a twin sister named Lisa. From our childhood, our parents doted on her. She was beautiful, vivacious, and savvy. They absolutely adored her. Conversely, they neglected me, despite being a twin, because I didn't resemble my sister. I had no standout features and was a bit of a daydreamer. When Lisa wanted to learn ballet, they quickly found a class for her. They spared no expense on ballet shoes, tights, and other gear for her practice. At every recital, they enthusiastically ordered extravagant costumes to make sure Lisa looked the cutest. In contrast, whether I said, I want to go to swimming school, or I want to take piano lessons, the reply was always the same. You don't need any classes. It's a waste of money to let a clumsy kid like you do anything. That was all I ever heard. I still vividly remember the scene of sending off the three of them from our front door as they happily went out to celebrate when Lisa won a ballet contest. Despite all the money they had spent on her ballet lessons. Lisa quit when she said, "I've had enough," as she advanced to high school. Our parents didn't say a word. Their favoritism became glaringly apparent when it came to our college education. When Lisa said she wanted to live alone in the city and attend a private women's university, they were all smiles, saying she didn't need to get a scholarship or a part-time job as they would fully support her financially. However, I was told that it was unthinkable for me to go to college, that I should be grateful that they raised an underachiever like me and should start working after high school. After a lot of negotiating, I was barely allowed to attend a local public university on the condition that I wouldn't rely on my parents for money, would contribute financially to the household, and would take care of the chores. From then on, I struggled juggling studies, a part-time job, and housework. I had a scholarship, so I couldn't afford to fail any subjects. I had to pay for my own living expenses, so I couldn't take time off work. If I didn't do the housework properly, they'd make me drop out of university. I spent every day rushing about, working my fingers to the bone. In contrast, my sister, who occasionally came home, looked just like a typical college student with fashionable clothes and hairstyles, seemingly enjoying her campus life with study and leisure. She always mocked me, who hardly had time to care about my appearance and looked worn out. "You really always look so shabby, don't you? I don't want people to think I'm your twin sister. I can't believe you can go out looking like that. I couldn't live if I were you, let alone go outside. And by the way, the university you go to must be really low level, right? Is there any point in you going to such a school? Isn't it just a waste?" My mom, siding with my sister, also scorned me. "She's right, you know, Martha. You're not the brightest bulb. Going to college will be a waste for you. You're always wandering around in shabby clothes. You're the neighborhood joke. On the other hand, everyone always compliments Lisa, saying what a beautiful daughter we have. It makes me so proud." Since I was young, I was used to this irrational resentment from my family. I didn't have time to care about their petty insults, so I hurried off to my part-time job. And so, the tumultuous 4 years of college passed, and both my sister and I managed to graduate. My family celebrated my sister's graduation with a trip overseas where they bought her a designer handbag. None of it had anything to do with me. I planned to move out after finding a job, but my parents stopped me. "We've raised you till now. As a way to repay us, do the housework, give your paycheck to us. Living alone is a waste of money. We won't allow it." So I ended up staying at home. Fortunately, the company I got hired at was just within a manageable commuting distance, even though it was quite far. My sister began working in a somewhat famous company in the city. She bragged about her company being located in East Village, but I didn't care. Years later, my sister married a colleague from her company and apparently quit her job. There was a wedding, but unsurprisingly, I wasn't invited. My sister's husband, Toby, also looked down on me, considering me inferior, probably influenced by my sister and parents. "Martha, you don't resemble Lisa at all. You're so plain. Are you sure you're twins? Feels more like your aunt and niece, attending some unknown college, working at a company no one's heard of. So low level, it's hilarious." My sister just smiled and didn't stop Toby from making these remarks. "Thank goodness the grandkids didn't take after Martha. They all look so cute, just like Lisa," my mom gushed while holding one of the grandkids, and everyone around her laughed in amusement. A few more years passed, and my mom suddenly passed away. Was it because of her lazy lifestyle where she hardly moved and left all the household chores to me? My dad and sister were devastated, but to my surprise, I felt nothing. They both berated me. "How heartless! You're a demon for not even shedding a tear at a time like this." I was hit in the face with a thrown object, and it was only then that the tears welled up in my eyes. My dad's legs got weaker after my mom's death. He wasn't to the point where he needed to be in a nursing home, but he needed help with the little things in daily life. My days were busy with work, housework, and taking care of my dad. My sister occasionally visited our home, but she only came to ask for pocket money for her kids from Dad. My dad never thanked me. In fact, he complained about everything I did. The bath water was too hot, the food was bland. He always ended with, "Your mom's death is your fault," as he threw something at me. My dad's legs were a bit weak, but apart from that, he was perfectly healthy. He used the money I contributed to the household to go out drinking in the daytime. When that wasn't enough, he demanded more from me. Why is it that he claims his legs hurt at home and makes me do everything, but he's perfectly fine when it's time to go out drinking? Looking back, I should have cut ties with such a family and escaped a long time ago. But back then, I was used to being treated unfairly and being subjected to harsh words since my childhood. It felt normal, as if my senses had been dulled. I never thought of escaping, and I was living with Dad alone. Then one day, my sister called out of the blue. Before I could even say hello, she started ranting.
How long are you planning on relying on our parents and staying at home? I am moving in with Dad, so could you please leave right now?
I didn't understand what she was saying, so I asked again. Wait a minute, you're moving in with Dad? Does he know about this?
Of course he does. Dad also wants to live with us. Seeing his grandkids every day, it's disgusting how you're leeching off Mom's inheritance and living in the house. I won't let you live luxuriously with her inheritance. We are moving there early next week, so you better leave soon.
And with that, she hung up abruptly. I was struck. I was stuck at the words Mom's inheritance. Mom's inheritance? What was that about? Anyway, I had to confirm it with Dad. Dad, are you really planning to live with my sister? Upon hearing my question, Dad coldly confirmed, yes. Lisa and her family will take care of me. I can't keep living with someone like you, who can't even do basic house chores properly. Lisa has told me that I don't need to worry about anything and wants me to spend time leisurely surrounded by my grandkids. Don't you think she's such a filial daughter? In contrast to you, you have always been a disappointment. Never getting married. All you do is waste the house's money, and on top of that, you're not even attractive. I'm ashamed to consider you my child. Get out of here. You're a nuisance. I'm severing our parent-child relationship. I found his words odd. What does he mean by wasting the house's money? I had a lot on my mind, but it finally hit me. Since both Dad and my sister are asking me to leave, there's no need for me to hold back anymore. I decided to leave this place proudly. I called my sister. Like you said, Dad also wants to live with you. He said he's cutting ties with me. I will leave by this week.
That's very understanding of you. Please don't cause any trouble for us in the end. You're not a part of our family anymore.
Right, sorry for all the trouble I've caused so far. By the way, when I move out, I can take my belongings with me, right? Clothes and such?
We don't need any of your stuff. I bet they're all cheap anyway. Take everything, but don't touch the house's money or stuff. If you do, I will call the police.
Got it. I will only take my things. And I hung up the phone. Well, I gotta move out all my stuff, I said, rolling up my sleeves with gusto. A few days later, while I was still unpacking my belongings in my new home, my phone rang. The moment I answered, my sister's furious voice blared.
What the hell? What's going on?
What do you mean? What's going on? I held the phone a bit away from my ear as I responded. Still, my sister's voice echoed shrilly.
There's nothing left in the house. No furniture, no appliances. Where did you put everything?
Here it comes. I had anticipated it, but the reality was even more dramatic than I had imagined. And I replied to my sister. But sis, didn't you tell me to take all my belongings? Everything here? I bought it with my own money, I said calmly.
What? You bought it all with your own money? That's a lie. There's no way someone like you who's working at some low-level company can afford all these electronics. You've even replaced the furniture since Mom passed away. You've probably used Mom's inheritance, right? Give them back. I'm going to call the police.
I sighed inwardly. As I suspected, my sister was confused. I began to explain to her slowly, so she could understand in her state of excitement. Sis, you've been talking about Mom's inheritance, but Mom didn't leave any inheritance. She was just a normal housewife. How could she possibly have left the kind of money you're expecting?
What? I don't understand.
My sister shouted back. If anyone was confused, it was me. The Roomba, the drum washing machine, and stuff like that, I bought them because after Mom passed, I got busy caring for Dad and working. These electronics helped me save time. I bought all of them with my own money. I decided to replace everything because most of the old items were on their last legs. And yes, I've been the one covering all the living expenses.
Lies! What about the furniture? Everything in the house is new since Mom died. The dining set, the beds, the sofa, everything.
Of course. I paid for all the furniture as well. I decided to replace them when I received my bonus because they were getting old. I could sense disbelief from the other end of the phone line.
What about the car? The car has been with us for ages.
The car is registered under my name. Always has been.
That's a lie. We quit our jobs, moved here, believing we could live off Mom's inheritance. We spent all our savings. We don't have a car. It's so inconvenient to go shopping. What are you going to do about this?
My sister's rant was giving me a headache. She had wrongfully assumed that the upgraded electronics and furniture were bought with Mom's inheritance. She was under the illusion that I was living a luxurious life with Mom's money, that she too had a right to the inheritance. Her plan seemed to be to kick me out and live luxuriously off the inheritance. I always knew that despite being attractive and shrewd, my sister wasn't exactly bright. But I hadn't realized she was this thoughtless. It's not like I can come back. You're the one who told me to leave and to take all my things with me. I just did as you asked. My sister continued ranting over the phone. I was ready to hang up, but there was one last thing I needed to tell her. By the way, I've been paying Dad's debts till now. You'll have to take care of them from now on.
What? Debt?
She sounded shocked. She probably had no idea about the debt. Our parents had been careful to keep it a secret from her. We weren't a particularly wealthy family, but our parents had kept up appearances, spending lavishly on my sister. Dad's earnings couldn't cover everything, so we had taken on debt. The money went to everything from my sister's ballet lessons in her childhood to her university fees. Decades of overspending, living well beyond our means, has resulted in this mountain of debt. In fact, all of Dad's debts were accumulated from the money he spent on my sister. So if she wants to pay them back, there's no issue, right? Didn't my sister say to Dad, "Don't worry about anything, just relax, surrounded by your grandchildren"? I interpreted that as, "Don't worry about the debts either." I was touched, really. Such a dutiful daughter, I said, feigning innocence. My sister's anger only intensifies at my words.
Don't mock me. And come to think of it, there's no way an employee from some unknown company like you can afford all the latest electronics and new furniture. You're definitely using Mom's inheritance, haven't you?
Do you even know what I do for a living? I asked her, keeping my tone steady.
I have no idea. You're probably just doing some worthless job at a useless company, aren't you?
I work at a foreign-owned financial institution.
What? Foreign-owned? What does that even mean?
My sister is clueless. Both my parents and sister, none of whom are good with foreign languages, belittled me when they found out I was working at a foreign-owned financial institution, a term they had never heard of, despite it being a well-known firm to most Americans. They had the audacity to call me incapable, while they lacked basic knowledge themselves. I attended college with the sole aim of mastering French, my favorite language, and by the time I graduated, I was fluent enough to use it in business. The company I work for values competence. I work hard and earn a decent salary for it. My sister and my parents, neither of them knew or cared to understand. It had always been this way. They thought I was dull and judged by intelligence on that, never caring about my grades, though I had always been a good student since elementary school. But I don't care if they understand now. My sister continues to scream.
Come home and apologize properly. I'll forgive you if you do it now. Where have you even moved to? Give me your address.
Why am I the one who has to apologize? Why should I seek her forgiveness? I've never understood my sister's thinking, and honestly, I never wanted to. There's no need for your forgiveness. I am no longer part of your family, so please don't call me again. Take care of your problems on your own. Goodbye. With that, I ended the call. Up until that very moment I hung up, her enraged voice echoed through the phone. But just like when Mom passed away, my heart remained unmoved. There was no one around to label me heartless, so I couldn't find it in myself to shed tears this time. Despite it all, my heart felt at ease. Several months later, I heard from a friend back home that my sister and her husband quit their jobs to cash in on Mom's inheritance. But when that fell through, they had no money, no car, and no jobs. The result was falling behind on paying back Dad's debts, struggling to make ends meet, and selling the family home. They ended up moving into a nearby apartment with their children and Dad. They couldn't repay all their debt even with the money from selling the house, and their constant financial struggle took a mental toll. Their family relationship suffered within the confines of that small apartment. My brother-in-law, Toby, seemed to resent my sister a lot. He felt tricked into spending all his savings and leaving his job. Their marriage seemed to be hanging by a thread. The silver lining was that their children quickly made friends with the kids in the apartment, and they seemed to be living relatively happily. That must be their only saving grace. I moved closer to work, and I am thoroughly enjoying spending all of my earned money on myself and spending my time on myself too. Life is so comfortable when I only have to worry about my job and my own needs. I leaned back on my new sofa, looking at my hands. My fingertips glistened with a beautiful nail art. After living a stifled life for so long, I plan to enjoy this carefree, solo life for a while longer.
Hey, is Marie making the food to celebrate the new year this time? My mother-in-law immediately reacted to this, waving her hands in front of her face and laughing. No way, that's impossible. My daughter-in-law can't cook at all. She's a hopeless housewife who can't even make food for the New Year's celebration. I do all the cooking around here. Her laughter was extremely unpleasant. It wasn't a joke, nor was it just going along with the mood of the moment. It was nothing but an insult to me. I had reached my breaking point. My next move was to fight back. I had to give it my all. I am Marie, a 28-year-old who just got married last year. I'm a full-time housewife who enjoys cooking. Though it hurts sometimes that my husband is content with anything as long as it's edible, he's kind, and we live in a newly remodeled large house with a spacious island kitchen I've always longed for. I guess it's the ideal life, but I had a problem since the beginning of my marriage. It was my mother-in-law. She claims to be good at cooking and thinks I'm a failure of a wife who can't cook. Well, I could endure it if she just thought that, but she was a very troublesome type who would go around saying it. Just yesterday, she was complaining to the neighbor's wife, loud enough for me to hear, while I was hanging laundry. My daughter-in-law can't even cook properly! Oh, it's terrible! I wonder what kind of education she had. My son is so unfortunate. I can't believe it. I was so angry that I almost broke the clothespin in my hand. I could endure her criticizing me, but I couldn't stand her speaking ill of my parents. I deeply respect my parents and have learned countless things from them. Yet, without knowing anything, or even trying to know, my mother-in-law was bad-mouthing me every day. Today, too, she seemed busy ruining my reputation, and I could hear her shrill voice gossiping with the neighborhood. She doesn't even know how to use seasoning. I have to cook, or else there's no taste. Why did my son marry someone like her? Then the neighbors chimed in. Freda has had it tough too. And why don't you teach her? I really wish they would stop. I gripped the glass in my hand so hard that it cracked. In the evening, when my husband Gregory came home, my mother-in-law was in the shower. I saw my chance and decided to unload everything I'd been holding back on Gregory. Can't you do something about your mother? She's going around the neighborhood every day saying I can't cook. Can't you say something to her, Gregory? As I put away the jacket Gregory handed me, I told him about my mother-in-law's behavior. Gregory doesn't particularly love his mother, and he does care for me, so I thought he would defend me. I believed he would sympathize and say, that must have been tough. But what came out of his mouth was entirely different. Well, Mom has always been particular about cooking, Gregory said, scratching his head and looking troubled. Particular about cooking? I almost blurted out. With that heavy seasoning? I stared at Gregory in disbelief, but he was dead serious. Come on, she's a good cook, right? Well, I don't really know much about good or bad cooking. Anyway, please get along with Mom. That's a wife's duty, isn't it? With that, Gregory left the room. Is this a joke? That was the only thought left in my mind. A good cook? A wife's duty? What does that even mean? All sorts of frustrations rushed into my heart at once. To be honest, and I hate to say it, but my mother-in-law's cooking is far from delicious. She's been in charge of all the cooking for the past year to prevent me from doing it, but I've never found it tasty. She's convinced that strong seasoning equals delicious. Gregory, who grew up with that taste, always finishes his meal without a fuss, but I honestly struggle to eat it every day. Continuing to eat such heavily seasoned food is definitely not good for my health, and I even feel a sense of crisis that it might ruin my taste buds. I managed to eat it somehow, fearing what would be said if I left anything. Alone in the quiet bedroom, I let out a big sigh. The shock wasn't that Gregory didn't criticize his mother's cooking. It's a wife's duty, huh? It was that he didn't take me seriously. At times like this, I miss the taste of my parents' home cooking. A few weeks passed, and the atmosphere of the year-end became more pronounced. It would be my first New Year since getting married. In this house, it's a tradition for relatives to gather every New Year and eat a feast prepared by my mother-in-law. When Gregory told me this, I secretly thought, really? Even though I just responded with, oh. The relatives who come to eat my mother-in-law's cooking every year must be used to it by now, but I can't help but feel sorry for them. I may be criticized by my mother-in-law for having bland taste or not being able to cook properly, but I believe in my cooking skills. I trust my parents who taught me the techniques. I want to cook for everyone somehow, and I want to correct Gregory's taste buds. With that determination, I decided to ask my mother-in-law, even though I knew it was a long shot. Mother-in-law? About the food for the New Year's celebration? I called out to her back as she was energetically taking out large plates and pots in the kitchen. I'll help too. but the mother-in-law who turned around had already refused with her expression. Marie, you can't even cook properly, so how can you make food for the New Year's celebration? You know that not just our family, but all the relatives are gathering, right? That's why I'm saying this. I married into this family. It's my duty as a wife to... I desperately argued, but my mother-in-law just shook her head. No, no. Do you want to create a weird atmosphere right at the beginning of the new year? Everyone comes to eat my cooking. We can't disappoint them. If you understand, please don't get in the way. I could only bite back my frustration as I stared at her turned back. The new year arrived and the relatives began to gather. There were about 20 of them, more than I thought. Most of them I hadn't seen since the wedding. Marie, Happy New Year! Oh my, it's been a while. Have you gotten used to married life yet? I guided them to the very spacious dining room, exchanging greetings with each of the relatives who crowded in. When I first came to this house, I was surprised by its vastness, but it seems the unusually large dining room was designed for occasions like this. In the dining room, my mother-in-law was already talking with the relatives who had arrived. At that moment, one of the relatives said, "By the way, is Marie making the feast this year?" My mother-in-law immediately reacted to this, waving her hands in front of her face and laughing. "That's impossible. My daughter-in-law can't cook at all. She's a hopeless housewife who can't even make a New Year's celebration meal. I do all the regular cooking, you know." Her laugh was very unpleasant. It wasn't a joke, nor was it just going along with the mood. It was simply an insult to me. I had reached my breaking point. "Mother-in-law? Then please, let me make the New Year's celebration meal. If it tastes bad, how about you make a palate-cleansing dish?" The room went quiet at my proposal. After a beat, the relatives began to murmur. "Well, I don't want bad food, but... Well, but experience is everything. Isn't it fine? Yeah, if it fails, Frida will take care of it, it seems." My mother-in-law, who had been silently listening to the relatives' conversation, seemed to give up, sensing that the mood was shifting towards let's let Marie try. "Well then, I'll let you practice this year." Her words hinted at reluctance, but now I could cook. "Ladies and gentlemen, please indulge this hopeless housewife's whims this year." Oh, I had plenty to say to her. My heart was filled with the fact that I could cook proudly in front of all these witnesses. Now it's time for a counterattack. All that's left is to give it my all. In conclusion, the cooking was perfect. Before the beautifully arranged feast on the large plate, exclamations of admiration rose from the relatives. "Wow, it looks delicious! Well done, Marie! Really, this isn't something just anyone can make." Among such comments, my mother-in-law, who had gone shopping for the palate-cleansing dish, returned and glanced at my cooking. Looks good, I guess, but it's probably tasteless." She emphasized the word probably, clearly unwilling to acknowledge me, and then deliberately said, "Well, I must make the palate-cleansing dish," and hurried into the kitchen. Ignoring her, I went around, handing out paper plates and forks to the relatives. "Everyone, please enjoy." Even as she headed to the kitchen, my mother-in-law's back was clearly focused on us. The relatives, in turn, took the food and tasted it. "This is..." someone muttered, their voice seemingly trembling. My mother-in-law laughed as if she were thoroughly pleased. "See? I told you! This is why she's a hopeless daughter-in-law. Everyone, you don't have to force yourselves to eat. I'll make a palate-cleansing dish right away." Her voice was triumphant, but it was soon drowned out by voices of joy. "This is the first time I've tasted such delicious New Year's celebration food. This is restaurant level. It's even better. It's like a hotel course meal. Marie, where did you learn to make this?" "Huh?" Standing in front of the lively crowd centered around the food, my mother-in-law was left speechless. Without anyone paying attention to my mother-in-law, all eyes were focused on me. "Actually," I began deciding to reveal the truth to everyone. "My family owns a historic French restaurant, known as a place where you can eat authentic French cuisine. It's even listed in the Michelin Guide. My father, the current 5th generation, oversees everything related to cooking, and my mother, who also comes from a family of chefs, supports him devotedly." I grew up watching my parents, and by the time I was in upper elementary school, I was learning to cook from them in earnest. My brother is set to take over, and even though I've left home after getting married, and probably won't be involved in the restaurant in the future, all the cooking knowledge I've learned from my parents is within me, and I'm proud of it. That's why I couldn't stand my mother-in-law's words and actions that denied my cooking skills. To deny my cooking is to deny my parents and the restaurant that my ancestors have passed down through generations. That's the situation. Actually, I did tell you before we got married, mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, who tends to disregard others and look down on me, seemed to think of me as just a daughter of a small country restaurant. Furthermore, Gregory, who is utterly indifferent to food, probably doesn't even understand the difference between a family restaurant and authentic French cuisine. I can't help but wonder why I married into this family. Marie! When I turned to the voice calling me, several eyes were looking at me, somewhat hesitantly, but expectantly. Can we eat more? I want to eat more too! Despite the substantial volume of the feast I had prepared, it had been completely consumed. Suddenly, I felt a surge of happiness, and almost cried. Being praised for the food I made should have been normal before I got married, but it seems I had completely forgotten that feeling in the past year. Yes, I'll make more right away! I dashed out of the room, passing by my mother-in-law, who was still standing still. Come to think of it, she had bought some ingredients. I decided to serve these people with all my might, no matter what I might be told later. Mother-in-law, I'll use the ingredients, okay? I gave a warning, but as I thought, there was no response. The ingredients were left as they were in the kitchen. As I reached to look inside the supermarket bag, someone entered the kitchen. Will you teach us how to cook too? I looked up to see about 5 women standing in a row. They ranged in age, from around my age to about my mother-in-law's age, but their eyes all sparkled the same way. The food was so delicious. We want to be as good as you. In retrospect, those words must have changed something inside me. I had never thought about teaching cooking before, but if there were people who felt that way about me, and if I could be of any help, I wanted to teach as much as I could. That's what I thought. With pleasure! I answered with a smile, and the room burst into excitement. Everyone was talking about how they would surprise their husbands by becoming good at cooking. And so, the impromptu cooking class began. Watching us cook with serious faces from a distance, my mother-in-law was silently cleaning up, and the finished dishes were met with more praise. I have to say, I actually found Frida's cooking a bit too salty for my taste. Marie's cooking is more delicate and refined, truly professional French cuisine. While I was happy to be recognized and celebrated by everyone, I felt a bit awkward towards my mother-in-law and smiled vaguely. She didn't interrupt and focused on cleaning up. Just as I was thinking about saying something to ease the situation, Gregory delivered the final blow. I really prefer Marie's cooking. Mom's strong flavors make me worry about salt and health. From now on, Marie should do the cooking, regularly. With those words, my mother-in-law seemed to have completely lost her place, and before I knew it, she had retreated to her room. After that, word of my cooking skills spread among the relatives, and I started receiving requests to teach cooking classes. At first, I hesitated, but remembering the excitement of the small cooking class I held on New Year's, and thinking that if people wanted my cooking skills, I accepted the request. Word of mouth spread quickly, and before I knew it, I was being featured in the media as a housewife who cooks authentic French cuisine. Now I receive teaching requests from all over the country. Life is truly unpredictable, and this was an unexpected turn of events, but I even had a conversation with my father in a cooking magazine. As for my mother-in-law, who had been spreading the word in the neighborhood that I was a bride who couldn't even cook properly, she stopped commenting on cooking altogether after that day. She stopped cooking altogether, and now I hold all the authority over cooking in the house. And we live peacefully, albeit busily.
I'm Elizabeth, 35 years old. I recently got married and I'm juggling work and household chores. My husband, Joseph, is a year older than me. And he's not only calm and kind, but also someone I can rely on. We work at the same company, and since we were once in a senior-junior relationship, we know each other's strengths and weaknesses. After getting married, Joseph and I moved in with my parents. Our family home is 2 stories and has many rooms. It's hard for my parents to manage the house alone, so we decided to live together and help my mother. My father and Joseph both work for major companies, and since they have business dealings, they're quite familiar with each other. I was worried that Joseph might get tired or feel awkward, but surprisingly, he gets along well with my father, and they often enjoy drinks together. After we started living as a family of 4, I began to help my mother with the housework, and I found some extra time, so I started a simple work-from-home job. I was thoroughly enjoying my peaceful married life. Then, one day, my brother Robert came home with his wife, Mary. They both looked tired, and we all warmly welcomed them. Our apartment burned down in a fire. Are you okay? It happened while we were out during the day, so no one was injured. Even the guy who was smoking in bed only suffered minor injuries. Everyone was relieved at my brother's words. But here's where the real story begins. Actually, we had our savings in the closet and it all burned up. We got the fire insurance, but it's still scary in an apartment where others might start a fire. We want to live in the single-family home. There's room to spare, right? Indeed, when I was young, about 10 people, including relatives, lived in this house. There are many vacant rooms, so it would be easy to accommodate my brother and his wife. If that's the case, we welcome you, my father said, and my brother and his wife looked relieved. As we all gathered for dinner, Joseph and my brother quickly hit it off, becoming as close as brothers. I thought I'd try to talk to Mary as well. Mary is a woman in her 40s, but she still has a cute face. She's very shy, and I couldn't find common ground. Mary, please be friends with me too. Yes, thank you. Mary seemed a bit hard to approach. Even though I tried to engage her in various topics, she only responded with, "Yes, that's right," and didn't expand the conversation. I thought she was just nervous on the first day, so I kept talking to Mary. The next day, my brother suddenly said, "I need to talk to you," and called me to the back of the house. Don't bother Mary just because she married me and started living with us. I was surprised at my brother's words. What? Did I do something? I heard you were forcing her to be friends with you. Mary is not good at that. I see, I'll be careful. I felt lonely, but if Mary was uncomfortable, I couldn't help with it. From then on, I tried not to get too close to Mary. I would talk to her if necessary, but otherwise I wouldn't. I have that kind of relationship with my father, so I thought that distance would be fine with Mary too. Then Mary started to approach me. Hey, are you ignoring me? No, I'm not ignoring you. But you said you wanted to be friends, and now you're not coming near me. But my brother told me... As I explained what was said, Mary chuckled. If you act too unnaturally, next time I'll cry that you're ignoring me, she said, and then left the scene. I was in panic. I've met various people before, and some were unpleasant. In those cases, I've always kept my distance and handled the situation. But what should I do if the person I want to distance myself from approaches me? I had no idea how to handle it, and although I tried to get closer to Mary little by little, I ended up acting suspiciously. Then my brother said to me, "Hey, I heard you ignored Mary. Accept her as family." "No, I want to be friends with Mary, but Mary..." "I heard you were blaming everything on Mary. I don't believe your story." As my brother turned his back and walked away, tears welled up in my eyes. How can I make him believe me? After some thought, I decided to record Mary's words. Soon after, Mary approached me. I had a voice recorder hidden in my pocket, so I was fully prepared. Elizabeth, can't you do better? I'm just saying to close the distance. You act so strange when I approach. But if I talk to you, I'm accused of forcing a relationship. And if I keep my distance, you say I'm ignoring you. I don't know what to do. Just do as I say. If you quietly listen and obey, I won't say anything. Mary chuckled and went somewhere. Afterward, as expected, my brother came and said, "What did you do to Mary? She was crying that you were harsh to her." Until now, I had only felt bad, but now I was prepared. Listen to this recording first. I took out the voice recorder and played the conversation between Mary and me. But my brother criticized me for recording it. "You think you're right by doing something so sneaky." What? Recording a conversation is the lowest. You're not recording now, are you? No, I'm not. Empty your pockets. I showed that my pockets were empty. I wouldn't record my own brother. So you think it's okay to record Mary because she's lying? But Mary lies. Mary is my wife. I understand if you're upset that a stranger has come in, but you're an adult, so stop acting like a child. My brother gave me a cold look and left. I was only hoping to resolve things here, so the shock was great. I knew I couldn't let things continue like this, so I decided to consult with my parents and Joseph. I was a little scared, but I let everyone listen to the voice recorder. I thought they would blame me for recording, like my brother did, but they said, "I've also felt suspicious of Mary. What is Robert doing while his sister is suffering? Yes, that girl pretends to do housework but slacks off. She's a cunning child." My parents listened seriously to my story and voiced their dissatisfaction with Mary. Robert blamed me for recording. He said I was sneaky. Then Joseph tightly grasped my hand. "Elizabeth must have felt so hurt by Mary, right? You wouldn't have recorded anything if she hadn't treated you like that." "Don't worry. I'm on your side, Elizabeth." Hearing Joseph's kind words, I broke down in tears of relief. Afterward, my father and Joseph seemed to have talked to my brother. When they explained that Mary was also at fault, my brother had no choice but to agree. And on the surface, my brother and I made up. But I had lost my trust in him. In the past, my brother was always on my side, no matter what. I understand that his wife Mary is important to him now, but I can't trust him anymore since he blamed me, even though it was clear that Mary was at fault. After that, Mary continued to target me, telling my brother behind my back, "Elizabeth did this," every time something happened. The problem surfaced, my brother blamed me, and I denied it. Then my parents and Joseph would defend me, and this cycle repeated. After this happened several times, my brother glared at me with hateful eyes and yelled at my parents and Joseph. "You are defending her? I am disappointed in you, Dad, Mom, and Joseph." Mary stood behind my brother with a victimized expression, and the rest of us were dumbfounded by her. I then started to stay in my room because I had work from home. My mother said, "You don't have to do housework, Elizabeth. Stay away from Mary." At this time, my parents were also telling my brother and his wife to leave the house. We can't keep people who cause problems in the house. "You mean Elizabeth, right? Kick Elizabeth out." "Are you serious? I'm talking about you too. I'm the eldest son and heir. It's natural for us to stay in this house, right?" "We don't need an heir in this house. I just want to live peacefully. It was fun when it was just the four of us, Robert, but everything changed when you came." I accidentally overheard my father and brother's conversation, and I began to think that if this problem continued, I should be the one to leave. Then, a decisive incident occurred. While I was working from home in my room on the second floor, I heard a loud noise as if something had fallen down the stairs. The stairs were right outside my room. Startled by the noise, I immediately opened the door. There, at the bottom of the stairs, Mary had fallen. "Are you okay?" As I rushed over, my brother quickly arrived and picked up Mary. Then Mary pointed at me and said, "Elizabeth, Me? I didn't do anything." But my brother wouldn't listen. What were you planning to do to Mary?" He came up the stairs, grabbed me by the collar, and yelled in my ear, "I can call the police, you know." I couldn't stop crying. I hadn't done anything, and felt so bad. Downstairs, Mary was sticking her tongue out at me while operating her mobile from her pocket. Probably, Mary had played a sound effect of something falling down the stairs at full volume. The sound was unnatural for something that had fallen. "Hey, Robert, I really didn't do anything. Instead, check Mary's mobile phone and see what Mary just did." "You are blaming Mary? You're the worst. Stay away from Mary. If you come near her again, I won't forgive you." My brother glared at me with eyes full of hatred. The brother who used to be so kind seemed like a stranger now. I realized that we could never go back to the good times we once had. Fortunately, Joseph believed my words. "Elizabeth wouldn't do something like that. Don't worry, I'm definitely on your side." Joseph's presence was incredibly reassuring. Of course, my parents were not fooled by Mary's deception either. I've fallen down those stairs before, but it never made that sound, and Mary didn't have a single scratch. It's unnatural. My father agreed with my mother, so we discussed and made a plan. First, to catch my brother and his wife off guard, Joseph and I left the house, bought a condominium near our workplace, and moved in. Unlike our family home, it was only a 3-room place, so cleaning was easier. After a while, my mother called, her voice filled with anger, and I had a feeling I knew what had happened. "That girl, now that you've left, she's saying I'm bullying her. I never bullied her, I just treated her formally, but Robert, I was hoping she would at least get along with Dad and Mom. We talked with Dad, and we decided to speed up our original plan. We've reached out our limit." From my usually gentle mother's raised voice, I could tell that Mary must have treated her terribly. My father forcefully pushed the plan forward, and they soon moved into our condominium. My father was furious, saying, "That guy's no longer my son. Joseph is my only son. Elizabeth married a good partner. I'm counting on you from now on." And he drank with Joseph to lift his spirits. Soon after, they put our family home up for sale and told my brother, "We've put the house up for sale. If you want to continue living there, buy it at the listed price. If you can't, leave by the end of the month. If you want to stay, buy it at the listed price." My brother's desperate voice came through the phone, not easily accepting my father's words. The family home sold for less than expected, but it still fetched around $27,000. My brother and his wife, who had lost their savings in a fire and had been spending freely while living in the family home, couldn't afford that amount. Moreover, my brother had apparently gone through debt, restricting without our knowledge, so he wouldn't pass a loan review. Mary hadn't been working for a long time, so getting a loan would be tough. Knowing this, their words about not depositing their savings in the bank but keeping them at home started to seem suspicious. Soon after, my brother came to us for help. We didn't intend to tell him our address, but my father was followed by my brother on his way home and our location was discovered. However, none of us opened the door and we responded through the intercom. My brother's face was haggard and tears welled in his eyes. "I've been constantly blamed by Mary. Being told to do something about it since we got married, she's looked down on me. And if I don't follow her orders, she throws a fit. That's why I had to act that way towards Elizabeth. Please forgive me. I really don't think Elizabeth pushed Mary down the stairs." My brother repeated his excuses over and over. Apparently, Mary is selfish and she can't be satisfied unless things go her way. My brother isn't allowed to argue, and when they're alone, she seems to take a dictatorial attitude, forcing all the housework on him. Listening to my brother's story, my father repeatedly said, "You could have handled it differently. Why didn't you come to us then?" Showing no intention of forgiving him. I thought it was bad enough with Elizabeth, but my wife suffered too, and I can't forgive you guys. You chose to side with Mary, right? Then you have to act like a man to the end. Well, wait. The house thing was Mary's idea. She said if we kicked out Elizabeth at Mom, Dad would give it to me. I told her many times that Dad might sell the house. My prediction came true, and Mary gets irritated every day, taking it out on me. Help me. I'm a victim too. At least leave the house to me. A gift during your lifetime is fine. I don't need any cash. None of us sympathized with my brother's desperate plea. My father yelled into the intercom, "If you are going to say that much, bring Mary here. I have nothing more to say to you." Then my father hung up the intercom. 2 hours later, my brother returned with Mary. Apparently, he couldn't persuade my father and must have been scolded by Mary. His face was red, as if he had been crying. Mary had a sullen look on her face and taunted, "Are you so poor that you can't even give your son a house?" A vein popped in my father's forehead, but he took a deep breath and explained to Mary, "We value family above all else. Joseph takes care of Elizabeth and us, so we trust him. But what about you? You falsely accused Elizabeth, who did nothing wrong. Fortunately, none of us believed you, and you even tried to do the same to Mom. I don't want to recognize you as family. I have no intention of giving you the house. At least apologize to Elizabeth and Mom." My father conveyed his earnest feelings to Mary, but his words didn't get through to her. "Huh? I'm not in the wrong. The world has always gone my way. That's how I met a husband who listens to me. Shouldn't you all do the same?" I couldn't stand Mary's insolent attitude. "Hey, do you know how much I suffered being falsely accused? You probably don't. You're the one who set it up. It's like everything goes dark and you feel despair. Do you think it's okay to do that to someone? I'm the only one who's allowed to. It's always been that way." "Oh, really? Then there is not a single person around you who likes you, is there?" "Huh? There is. This guy." Mary pointed at my brother. No, Robert doesn't love you, Mary, anymore. Can't you see it in his face? What he feels for you is fear, not love. If you continue like this, you'll never be loved by anyone for the rest of your life." Mary's face, filled with anger, was directed at the camera. Even I felt fear looking at that face. So I conveyed my feelings to my brother. "Hey, Robert, are you really okay with this? The old Robert was brave, and if boys teased me, you'd come to help me right away. I always thought you were strong, Robert. Wake up already." Then my mother, who had come to stand next to me, raised her voice to my brother. "I don't think of you as my son anymore. I believe you'll wake up. if you stay with Mary like this, you'll only get worse." While my mother was saying this, Mary, looking confused, took my brother and left. Did my mother's words get through to him in the end? After that, my father really sold the house. It seems my brother and his wife moved into a cheap apartment. My brother was still under Mary's brainwashing, but he began to feel a little distrustful of her attitude. Our desperate voices seemed to have reached him somewhat, and he finally took action. Though all he did was to explain the situation to friends and co-workers, he received the same persuasion from them as from us, and the brainwashing seemed to gradually unravel. He finally understood how crazy Mary's words were. When he confronted Mary with a divorce, she demanded a lump sum payment of $90,000, and they began to argue, as my calmer brother told my mother over the phone. Divorcing over personality differences is difficult. It took my brother a year to finally divorce Mary. After the divorce, Mary's bad reputation spread, and no one wanted to deal with her. Apparently, she was already estranged from her parents and is leading a lonely life. I hope she never victimizes anyone like my brother again and stays quiet. After that, I returned to peaceful days. But because of Mary, I realized I could be falsely accused at any time, so I started taking measures to protect myself, like installing security cameras in the living room and entrance. Even if I can't trust my parents and Joseph, it doesn't mean that people coming from outside can be trusted. No one knows what can happen when. From now on, I'll research how to deal with false accusations so that my family doesn't suffer from them, and I'll teach everyone. I've decided to protect my family in this way. After all, I now have the most precious treasure to protect in my belly.
Hey, big bro, how many times have you played princess in this car? Out of the blue, my 5-year-old niece Tiana asked this question. Huh? While driving, my husband Corey responded with a surprised look. What do you mean, playing princess? Well, have you had a lot of princesses in the car? Tiana's odd comment was a turning point. It led me to discover the true identity of my husband. I'm Annie, a 25-year-old office worker. I've recently tied the knot. My husband? Corey, a co-worker. Corey started at the company the same year I did. He's not just good at his job, he's also incredibly good-looking, a real catch from day one. 2 colleagues, Sylvia and Angelica, both a couple of years my senior, clearly had their eyes on him. They often came over to Corey's desk offering to help with work or bringing him snacks, clearly trying to get his attention. One day, I found myself invited to a social gathering by Sylvia and Angelica. Of course, Corey was there too. There were 2 other male employees, but the eyes of these senior colleagues were fixed squarely on Corey. While I politely nodded along with the conversation, I quietly sipped my drink. To my surprise, Corey texted me later that night. Hey, Annie, we didn't get to talk much today. Want to go for a drive sometime? I was taken aback. I had always assumed he had no interest in me. I was a little puzzled by the sudden invitation, but I was delighted that a popular guy like him was showing interest in me. Soon, Corey and I began seeing each other occasionally and eventually started dating. Word got around the office and we became the hot topic. Sylvia and Angelica in particular must have been stunned when they found out we were dating. Our interactions with them turned awkward, limited to polite greetings. Still, I was thrilled that Corey was my boyfriend. He treated me well, and being with him was pure joy. As we continued to date, something started to nag at me. Whenever we were out, Corey seemed to attract attention from women. As we walked down the street, I noticed a pair of young women staring at Corey next to me. After we passed, I overheard them. "Wow, did you see that guy? He's so hot. I know, right? What a looker!" They were glancing back at us. I glanced at Corey, but it was hard to tell if he was hearing the same thing or not. He was completely expressionless. Maybe for Corey, this kind of thing is just another day at the office. That could be why he doesn't even flinch when he hears voices like this. It's moments like these that make me fall for him all over again. But I couldn't just bask in the joy. It happened while we were sitting in the cafe. Sure enough, a group of women sitting at the next table were stealing glances at Corey. And as we got up to leave and passed by them to pay the bill, I heard the woman whispering among themselves, "He's good looking, but isn't she just average? Yeah, what a waste." Hearing this, a shock ran through me, but I acted like I hadn't heard a thing. Corey, as usual, was indifferent and settled the bill. I was hurt by those words, yet a part of me thought, maybe they're right. I had always felt insecure, fearing that I might not be good enough for someone as handsome as Corey. Driven by my insecurity, I opened up to him about it. "I do love you, Corey, but sometimes I worry. You're quite the catch, and I wonder if I'm enough for you." After hearing me say this, Corey looked surprised, but quickly responded with a warm smile. "You don't have to worry, Annie. I love you just the way you are." Those words brought tears to my eyes, and I decided to stop overthinking it. And so, our relationship thrived and led us to marriage. At our wedding, Corey was quite the hit with the ladies. My aunt in her 50s ran up to me, exclaiming, "Annie, you've scored a handsome hubby! Way to go!" My old friends also came up to me, whispering, "Your husband is so handsome. We're jealous." But I had no more worries. Corey had chosen to marry me, after all. I was so happy. Among the wedding guests were Sylvia and Angelica, my senior colleagues. Both congratulated us, smiling warmly. "Congrats! Wishing you all the happiness!" I hugged them both, saying, "Thank you." My older sister and her family also attended. My sister is 4 years older than me and has a 5-year-old daughter named Tiana. I had asked Tiana to be our flower girl. I've always adored Tiana, so having her as part of the ceremony was a joy. Sometime after the wedding, my sister asked if we could babysit Tiana for a bit. Corey had the day off, so I happily agreed. When my sister came to pick her up, Tiana was fussing, saying she didn't want to leave yet. My sister had to carry the crying Tiana away, thanking us before she left. "It seemed Tiana wanted to stay longer," I said. "Yeah," Corey agreed. "You know, we talked about taking a spa getaway, just the two of us, right? How about we take Tiana along next time?" "Wait, to the spa?" "Yeah, she was our flower girl, so it'd be a nice thank you. What do you think?" If you really want to. Sure." "Really? Thank you, Corey." With that, we got the green light from my sister to take Tiana on an overnight spa trip. Corey drove, I was in the passenger seat, and Tiana sat in a child seat we borrowed from my sister. Tiana was all smiles, excited for the drive. We chatted and snacked as we made our way to the spa. After a while, Tiana started to talk. "When I was in my mommy's tummy?" "What?" I was shocked. I remembered my sister saying that Tiana might have womb memories. At bedtime, Tiana had mentioned some uncanny things my sister had told me. "In my mommy's tummy, I was usually sleeping, but sometimes I'd wake up and float around." "Wow, Tiana, that's amazing. You remember so much." "Yeah, and I could also hear Mommy's voice." "Really?" Hearing this, even Corey, who was driving, couldn't hide his astonishment. "Wow, can't believe this stuff actually happens." "It's amazing, isn't it? kids are something else. Soon after, Corey saw a convenience store on the side of the road. He parked the car and went inside to shop. Tiana and I decided to wait in the car. Eventually, Corey came back and we resumed our journey to the hot springs. As we were driving, Tiana suddenly said something surprising. "Hey, big bro, how many times have you played princess in this car?" Corey almost spat out his coffee. "What?" Corey looked perplexed as he repeated, "Princess games?" "Yep, you've had a lot of princesses in here, haven't you?" Caught off guard by Tiana's abrupt comment, Corey was left wide-eyed and speechless. Confused, I turned around to question Tiana. "Tiana, what do you mean by princesses?" "I mean, you've played princess a lot in this car, haven't you?" I was as baffled as Corey was. Seeing our confusion, Tiana teased, "I won't tell. It's my secret now because I found out on my own." Tiana wouldn't elaborate any further, giggling to herself and whispering, "It's a secret." Suddenly, she grew tired and fell asleep. The atmosphere in the car turned strangely awkward. Still puzzled by Tiana's words, Corey and I conversed. So, what was Tiana talking about? This princess thing? No idea, man. I know she likes princess characters and often plays pretend at home. Maybe she saw a princess in the car? Who knows? You know, it seems like Tiana might have some sort of prenatal memories, and maybe even special intuition. Come to think of it, she did mention she found out something on her own. About 2 hours later, we finally arrived at the hot springs. Tiana woke up as we arrived and went with us to our hotel room. All three of us entered the room, and Tiana happily gazed out the window. "I want to hit the hot springs right away. Is that cool?" "Well, sure, go ahead." Corey left the room alone to take a bath. I chatted with Tiana in the room, feeling relaxed. But then I remembered what happened in the car, and I had to ask her again. "Hey, Tiana, earlier in the car you asked Corey, how many times have you played princess in this car? What was that about?" "Uh-huh. I have no idea what you were talking about, and it's been bothering me." "Well, then I'll show you, Annie." Tiana opened her small bag that she always carries and began to lay out various items on the table. "What are these?" "These are the things I found in Big Bro's car. They were cute, so I thought I'd keep them a secret and take them all." I looked at the items Tiana had laid out on the table, and I was stunned. Hairpins, hair clips, earrings, necklaces, lipstick, mascara, and even a hotel-provided hairbrush? None of it was mine, but they were clearly belongings of an adult woman. Where exactly in the car did you find these?" "Well, they were under the seat near my feet. A lot of them, actually." "Wait, all of these were scattered around?" "Yes, it's like a princess playset, right? Rin has a lot of these at home, too." "That's true. Listen, can I hold on to these? I want to ask Corey something." "What? No way, I found them." "I'll buy you another adorable princess set, okay?" "Really? Okay, fine then." With that, I put everything Tiana laid out on the table into my bag. I had thought Tiana had some special perception, talking about prenatal memories and such, but it seems that wasn't the case. However, my gut feeling wouldn't go away. Whose are these? Then Tiana and I went to take a hot spring bath. When we returned to the room, Corey was already there fiddling with his mobile phone. Upon our entry, he hurriedly stuffed his phone into his pocket, looking somewhat suspicious. Welcome back." "Thanks. The hot springs were nice, right?" "Yeah, this place has amazing springs." Tiana got all warmed up too. "Yes! After that, we enjoyed a luxurious dinner at the hotel. At night, Tiana, probably tired, fell asleep early. Corey was sprawled out, playing with his phone. Hey, Corey. Could you take a look at this? I placed all the items I had just received from Tiana on the table. Corey, rising from his seat to get a closer look, seemed to freeze, speechless. Looks like Tiana found all these things rolling around on the floor of the car. Corey, who had been slightly flushed from drinking, suddenly turned pale. She thought these were all princess playset stuff. Accessories, lipstick, mascara, brushes, and all. Is that what this is about? So whose necklace is this? I held up the necklace for Corey to see. He didn't answer. Next, I took the lipstick and examined it closely, and it had the name Sylvia engraved on it. Sylvia? At this, Corey averted his eyes. Corey, this can't be Sylvia from work, can it? Corey remained uncomfortably silent. Why would Sylvia's lipstick be in your car? Did you give her a ride? He nodded in silence. Why? Are you seeing Sylvia? He nodded again. Are you kidding? Was this before or after our marriage? Corey answered in a somber tone. Both before and after. What? I was so shocked my mouth stayed wide open. After digging for the truth, Corey finally admitted to having an affair with Sylvia. But the surprises didn't stop there. I began to worry about Angelica, who used to be close to Sylvia and also chased after Corey back in the day. Hey, you're not involved with Angelica too, right? Corey averted his eyes. You've got to be kidding me! Turns out Corey had been secretly seeing both Sylvia and Angelica while we were together. This continued even after we got married. Given that Corey, who works in sales, often worked late and went in on weekends, I now understood why he seemed so busy all the time. When I started dating you, Sylvia began sending me tons of emails every day. She wanted to meet, just the two of us. So I'd meet her occasionally. Then Angelica reached out, and I couldn't say no, and things just spiraled from there. I can't believe this. I felt so drained that I just sat down where I was standing. My handsome, kind husband had been involved with 3 women at the same time. As I probed further, it turns out Corey had dated multiple women since high school. At one point during college, he was seeing up to 5 women at the same time. I never wanted to ask Corey about his past relationships in detail. I thought nothing good would come of it. But to think he was this much of a womanizer. If you wanted to date multiple women, why the heck did you marry me? You could have stayed single and lived it up. I genuinely wanted to marry you, Annie. You're the steady type, someone I wanted as my wife. My parents were also pressuring me to get married and give them grandchildren. So you didn't think you should break up with the others? I really love you, Annie, but I also needed different types of relationships. What? Sylvia is like the dependable older sister, and Angelica is, well, harsh, but physically my type. They all serve different roles for me. It's been normal for me to rotate through multiple women. By now, I was beyond angry and just dumbfounded. My once dashing husband now just looked like a total sleaze. But I had no idea there was something left in the car like that. Me neither. If Tiana hadn't found it, I'd still be in the dark. I'm really sorry. Remember how I used to say I felt insecure because you're so popular? That I felt I wasn't good enough for you? Yeah. Well, that's changed. No matter how handsome or popular you are, you're just a low-life man. Corey looked down in defeat. If you want to sneak around, then go ahead and do it for the rest of your life. You'll find women who will flock to you just because you're good looking. But I'm done. I want a divorce. Corey's shoulders slumped. It was now late into the night. Tiana was sound asleep. I was thankful to Tiana for finding all those lost items in the car. If not for this turn of events, I'd still be living in ignorance about the real Corey. What was supposed to be a happy hot spring trip had turned into the worst night of our lives. I was grateful to have caught on to Corey's infidelity sooner rather than later. The next day, the three of us went home and dropped off Tiana at my sister's place. Once the vacation ended, Corey and I headed back to work. His face was ashen. Everyone arrived for work and the morning meeting began. Today, I was the one leading it. Good morning, everyone. A quick announcement about some lost and found items. It turns out my husband's car was a treasure trove of lost items. Upon asking him, it seems they all belonged to Sylvia and Angelica. I said this while placing the lost items from the car onto my desk. Both Sylvia and Angelica looked shocked, and the other employees started murmuring. Corey just stood there with a blank expression. This lipstick has Sylvia's name on it, doesn't it? As I held out the lipstick, Sylvia rushed over with a flustered look to claim it. I'm not sure about the rest, so could you two sort it out? Sylvia and Angelica started dividing up the various items I had placed on my desk. Both were visibly sweating and flushed. Sylvia, Angelica, thank you for entertaining my husband so thoroughly before and after our marriage. I understand he's been a frequent guest at your homes. Sylvia and Angelica looked tense. The other employees and even the boss were stunned. Since I've found out that my husband has been seeing both of these ladies while married to me, I've decided to divorce him. Corey's face sank so low it almost disappeared. I'm stepping down as his wife, so feel free to fight over him as you please. That's all for me. Thanks for listening. This concludes our morning meeting. I sat down, and the room buzzed with whispers. Corey, Sylvia, and Angelica stood silent and defeated. Soon after, all three were called into a separate room by their bosses. Eventually, the trio could no longer stay at the company and left, effectively getting fired. After the divorce, I returned to my parents' house and planned to commute from there for a while. I consulted a lawyer and sought compensation from Corey, Sylvia, and Angelica in the divorce trial. Later, I learned that Sylvia and Angelica were fully aware of each other's affairs with Corey and had been competing by intentionally leaving their belongings in his car. Their little lost and found battle had been playing out without Corey and me ever knowing. Post-departure from the company, none became a couple, and they all dispersed. All three had a tough time finding new jobs, partly because they'd left the company in what was essentially a firing. Now, it seems, they're all scraping by, dipping into their savings and taking part-time jobs to keep up with their alimony payments from their divorce cases. On top of that, it appears the rumor has spread and they've lost the relationships they had built up over the years. As for me, being back home meant I saw more of my sister and Tiana. Tiana still adored playing princess, happily prancing in front of the mirror in dresses and tiaras. You really are a cute princess. Yeah, I hope I will marry a handsome prince someday. Yes, but remember, some princes might look good, but are actually really bad. Make sure he's also a prince at heart before you marry him. Got it. I hope my niece Tiana continues to grow and truly finds happiness. As for me, who ended up divorced in my 20s, I hope to use this bitter experience for a better future, hoping for a good relationship down the line.
Her looks aren't too bad, I guess. She's not a beauty queen, but she doesn't fade into the background either. When I first visited my boyfriend Kevin's house for a family meeting, his mom, Emily, didn't waste any time critiquing my appearance. We had barely said hello. This was my first time meeting Kevin's parents. My name is Mia. Though we'd only been dating for 6 months, Kevin, who's 33, is 2 years older than me. I'm 31, so we're both at an age where marriage wouldn't be out of the question. I had naturally begun to think about marrying Kevin, and 3 months into our relationship, I introduced him to my mom, but I hadn't met his family yet. That's why I started to worry that maybe he was just toying with me. Kevin graduated from a top-tier university and is a high achiever at work. On the other hand, I'm just your average office worker. Kevin was the one who made the first move. He said he fell for me the moment he saw me during a meeting at my office. He gave me his business card and really went out of his way to win me over. Once we started dating, I found out that Kevin is both thoughtful and kind. But he's not a pushover. He's a genuine sportsman and really good-looking. He has a lot of friends and is quite popular with the ladies. Why hadn't such an awesome guy dated anyone before? He could have easily been married to a beautiful woman by now. Curious, I asked Kevin why that was. Apparently, his overly doting mom was the reason. It seems that Emily, Kevin's mother, has been consistently hostile toward all his previous girlfriends. So Kevin told me, "My mom is just nuts, okay?" And he's been reluctant to introduce me. "I love you, Mia, and I want to marry you right away, but it's obvious she'll oppose it. She might even verbally abuse you to break us up." Is she really that bad? But you shouldn't call your own mom that woman, you know? When I gently cautioned him, Kevin shook his head. "It's not for my sake, but hers. She's not happy unless she's number one. She believes she's always right and that everyone else should just fall in line. I've come to think of her as a different species." I couldn't believe that Kevin could feel so strongly against his mom. Doesn't your dad say anything? In my family, it was just my mom and me. My dad died of an illness when I was young, so I really don't know what it's like to have a dad. But I wondered why Kevin's dad would allow someone his son described as nuts to act this way. Kevin sighed. "Dad has just given up. He says she used to be reasonable when they first got married, but became more self-centered over time. Now he's just happy if she doesn't interfere with his work." "Oh, I see," I replied, but I still couldn't fully believe it. Based on my own mom, I thought that toxic parents like this were only in movies or shows. But the moment I met her, I felt what Kevin described as completely insane. Emily's sudden outburst left me speechless for a moment. Immediately, Kevin said, "Mom, that's rude," in anger. Andrew, Kevin's dad, also gave Emily a stern look and said, "Cut it out." But Emily didn't care. "What's the big deal? I'm just speaking my mind." Even though she claimed to be complimenting me, it clearly seemed malicious. Andrew just sighed and kept quiet. Kevin angrily retorted, "That's not a compliment. You're just trying to pick a fight." Emily laughed mockingly. "After all, Mia, you come from a single-parent home, right? You're not suitable for marriage with Kevin." More hurtful words followed. The first family meeting went like this from start to finish. I felt more drained than I had imagined. On the way home, when Kevin offered to drop me off, another argument broke out. Emily threw her hands up in exasperation. "Why do I have to drive Mia home when Kevin is already back? Mia, you need to speak up and say you don't need a ride. Just go home by yourself." "Mom, I said I want to take Mia home, so why are you blaming her? Are you losing it?" Kevin fired back, clearly frustrated. You see, Kevin is usually a calm guy. It was the first time I had seen him angry all day, and I was beginning to think he had a point about his mom being totally crazy. No wonder Kevin didn't want to introduce us. If this is what the first meeting is like, what's next? I started to feel anxious. I love Kevin, but I had zero confidence that I could get along with Emily. Sorry about that. My mom's behavior is just embarrassing. Kevin apologized as we drove home. It's okay. Your mom sure has a unique way of seeing things. I responded cautiously. Tell me about it. First she opposed our marriage, and now she says if we're getting married, it better be a big ceremony. Kevin sighed. In fact, just before at Kevin's house, his dad Andrew had asked, "What are you planning for the wedding?" Kevin and I are both in our 30s. Andrew seemed to think this meeting was for discussing wedding plans. In light of Kevin feeling embarrassed about his over-the-top mom, I proposed, maybe we can skip the wedding ceremony altogether. How about just taking some photos with both our families? As a last-ditch effort, I added, given the times, having a big ceremony might be risky. Kevin quickly agreed. Right. These days, many people opt for smaller, family-only weddings. Times have changed. Andrew chimed in. If Mia is okay with it, then so am I. Kevin seemed on board with the idea. Just when it looked like my suggestion would go through, Emily, for some reason, was adamantly against it. No way! Are you trying to tarnish our family's reputation? You can't skip important life rituals. Both of you lack common sense. She shouted, glaring at me. Emily was relentless. Marriage involves two families, not just the couple. A wedding ceremony is a way to gain approval from extended family and friends. It's a requirement for your marriage to be recognized. Despite our reservations, we ended up planning a grand wedding, driven by Emily's family honor and reputation arguments. Now the guest list included not just close family, but also Kevin and Andrew's colleagues, business contacts, and distant relatives. But here's the thing, my family isn't that big. We never planned to invite distant relatives, so there was a notable difference in the guest count between the groom's and the bride's sides. Looking at the guest list, Emily smirked. Oh, Mia's family is small, and it doesn't seem like you have anyone significant in terms of career. Clearly, she just wanted to make me feel inferior. The big day finally arrived. Almost everyone we invited showed up, and the wedding ceremony began smoothly, without a hitch. Between the performances of friends and a heartfelt speech from a mentor, the vibe was electric. I alternated between chatting with friends and colleagues and keeping an eye on Emily's actions. Emily was busy pouring drinks for various guests, passionately engaged in conversation. I couldn't hear exactly what she was saying, but her smug expression and the subtle reactions of her listeners gave me a pretty good idea. Probably bragging about Kevin and bad-mouthing me. What caught my attention was that people were also pouring drinks for Emily in return. She'd empty her glass and move to the next table, her face red and her steps unsteady. Kevin and I, while not saying anything, watched her nervously. I looked around for Andrew and found him oblivious, caught up in high spirits with his boss and colleagues. I was hoping everything would end smoothly, but the drama unfolded at the very end of the ceremony. During the letter segment from the bride to the parents, I expressed my gratitude towards my late dad and the mom who raised me. Mom was holding Dad's portrait close, already tearing up as she listened to my words. I really can't thank you enough, Mom, for raising me as a single mom after Dad passed away. I remembered times when I was sad that Dad couldn't attend school sports events, and how I cried when I got teased for not having a dad. During my teenage years, I was defiant and stopped talking to Mom. I regretted not being more filial and cherishing our time together. I broke down halfway through reading, tears smudging my makeup. I was so emotional. I even got hiccups, but I managed to finish my speech. Sniffles and choked up voices filled the room as people were touched by my words. A tipsy uncle from the family shouted, "Go, Mia!" warming the atmosphere. Yet only Emily, who was clearly intoxicated, wore a scowl on her face. The host announced, "Next, we have gifts for the mom of both families." And Kevin and I handed a large bouquet of flowers to each of our moms. The staff turned the microphone to my mom, who said, "Thank you so much. You've grown into such a wonderful person. I'm so happy." She then thanked everyone in the room. "I appreciate everyone who's been watching over Mia with us and for being here today." Just as the staff directed the mic toward Emily, she snatched it. Everyone was shocked. Emily bluntly said, "Mia's mom spoke nicely, but let's be clear. You didn't raise her alone. You got help from men, didn't you? I'm not thrilled to take in the daughter of such a lowly single mother, but I guess we can reform her." The room went dead silent. Emily, pleased with herself, concluded, "I'm quite forgiving." Even I, Kevin, and Andrew couldn't stop her in time. Kevin was speechless. Andrew's face went from happily tipsy to bright red with his mouth hanging open. I couldn't let it slide when she spoke about Mom. I glared at Emily and said, "No, you don't need to be forgiving." I didn't have a mic, but my words carried in the quiet room. "Is it that bad if Dad isn't around? Everyone has a limited time sooner or later. You can't control that, can you? You say Emily is poor and she's from a single mother family, but people who are rich with both parents do bad things too. We've lived our lives honorably without any shame. We don't need your acceptance." Emily turned to the crowd and said, "See, this is what I mean. Everyone, do you get it? Daughters of single mothers have tough personalities. It's really troublesome to have to re-educate them." Andrew yelled, "Why would you say something like that now? Are you stupid?" "What the heck is that? That's terrible." One of my friends ignited the conversation, and the rest of the guests started murmuring, "What's wrong with her? I feel sorry for Mia. Doesn't she feel embarrassed?" Emily seemed surprised by the reaction from the crowd. It wasn't what she expected. Slowly, her face showed signs of confusion. But even with icy glares from others, Emily didn't back down. "I said it for the sake of our family's honor," Emily insisted. Kevin sharply interjects, "Don't lie about doing it for the family, Mom. You're just looking out for yourself. Neither Dad, Mia, nor I ever cared if Mia had a father or not." Andrew joins in. "Not having a father isn't a child's fault. It's not Mia's fault. Even in normal families with both parents, there are messed up people like you." He glares at Emily. Stunned by the intensity from both Andrew and Kevin, Emily hesitates but tries to justify herself. "But surely a daughter without a father can't turn out well. I can't bear to think of sweet Kevin struggling because of it." Andrew loses it. "That's it. We're getting a divorce. Are you kidding me? Aren't you embarrassed by how senseless and drunk you are? Our company's CEO and clients are here, even Kevin's boss. Are you trying to ruin our careers?" Emily is blindsided by Andrew's call for a divorce. "Sorry, so sorry." She immediately apologizes deeply. "I'll get along with Mia and her mom from now on. Andrew, please no divorce. Mia, say something." I reject her. "No way. You've looked down on not just me, but also my mom. Why would we suddenly support you now?" Kevin adds coldly, "Exactly. There's no going back after causing such a scene. What's lost is lost." My mom, who has been watching all along, sighs. She tenderly touches a picture of my late dad on the table. "My husband would have wanted to be here. He would have hated to hear Mia called a child without a father. He'd want to be at his beautiful daughter's wedding, wouldn't he? Family isn't a given. It's a blessing. Kevin's mom, you've destroyed that yourself. I hug my mom, and Kevin stands beside me. Facing the crowd, Kevin declares, "It's clear who's the more respectable mom. My family is Mia, and the woman who raised her to be who she is." He looks at Emily. "Mom, thanks for raising me, but don't disappoint me anymore." Emily is stunned, frozen in place. Applause and warm cheers fill the room. Don't let a toxic parent bring you down. From the crowd's reaction, Emily seems to realize she's beyond redemption. When you act like a decent human being, you don't ruin your son's wedding, Emily, I said softly. Unable to hold back any longer, Emily burst into loud sobs. After that, the wedding became legendary in its own way. The story spread from the guests to my workplace, making me a bit embarrassed for a while. However, most people just laughed at Emily's ridiculous behavior and sympathized with me. Andrew quickly hired a lawyer and filed for divorce from Emily. Due to her daily imprudent behavior and excessive spending, he managed to significantly reduce her share of the assets. Emily was kicked out of the house and appears to be living a miserable life in an old apartment. I later found out that the so-called prestigious family background was only on Kevin's father's side. Emily was actually from an ordinary middle-class family. She was just exploiting other people's success and power. She even had to pay us in full for the damages and emotional stress she caused at the wedding. Despite that wedding disaster, Kevin and I are doing well. He stood up for me, and I fell even more in love with him. Emily, who used to trouble Kevin, is gone. Now Kevin and I are looking forward to building a happy home together.